in tax-free cash.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the
unpredictable. What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Good evening, good morning, live from Washington, D.C. This is The Late Show live on GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
Due to the surrounding circumstances, the investigation is now being led by officers from Counter-Terrorism Policing London.
News story tonight, the Daily Mail reporting that the suspect in the stabbing of 2 children in a North London school shouted Allahu Akbar during the attack. That's according to witnesses. The 13-year-old has been arrested and 2 teenagers are now fighting for their lives. Terror police are investigating the attack. It is a shocking story. We'll bring you any updates as we get them. Also tonight.
I will never walk away from the mandate I was given to change this country. I will never walk away from the people that I'm charged with fighting for. And I will never walk away from the country that I love.
Well, he might have to be pushed then. That was a defiance to Keir Starmer saying that he's going nowhere for now, that is. And tonight, a fresh setback for the Prime Minister. It sounds like his former right-hand man apologised for his association with a paedophile counsellor, but he's had the whip removed. Did you feel that Starmer's stubbornness today was defiance and he has to move forward? Let me know. Meanwhile, also.
People aren't more productive working at home. It's a load of nonsense. They're more productive being with other fellow human beings and working as part of a team.
Well, that statement went viral today. Nobody was more surprised about that than Nigel Farage. It's had more than 15 million views and caused a lot of controversy. Does that mean that Reform are out of touch with the way that younger people want to work today? And other Reform news this evening. Bangor University Debating Society has banned Reform MPs from debating. So what will my free speech loving American guests think about that? Also tonight, take a look at these incredibly disturbing images. This is a masked man approaching the house of American TV star Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy. They've been released tonight by the FBI. Now, this comes nearly 10 days after Nancy went missing. Why are we only seeing these now? We'll explain all. I'm going to be joined by former FBI agents who will decipher everything, and there may be some news on this within the next 2 hours. Also,
this is the most vulnerable the British monarchy has ever been. I mean, I heard they were asking the Queen questions about the Epstein class. They ought to ask the King and Queen questions, and maybe this will be the end of the monarchy.
The end of the monarchy, well, it's an unimaginable thought for us Brits, but that's what one congressman in this town suggested as the Epstein saga continues to torment the royal family. What should Andrew do next? I'm Bev Turner, and this is The Late Show Live. So breaking news tonight, the Daily Mail reporting the suspect in that awful stabbing of 2 children in a North London school shouted Allahu Akbar during the attack. This means that counter-terrorism police are leading the investigation amid suspicions that it was ideologically motivated. A 13-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, while 2 boys aged 12 and 13 are tonight fighting for their lives. Sources have told the Daily Mail that the suspect was not a pupil at the school, raising questions about how he managed to get into the building with a concealed weapon. The father of one of the pupils have said he came into the school, he saw my son and stabbed him in the neck. 2 boys were on the floor. The other children thought they were just playing, but then they didn't get up. It is awful. The incident occurred in a classroom at Kingsbury High School, Brent, Northwest, which, while not a Jewish school, is within a local Jewish community there. And police gave an update tonight into the shocking incident.
The suspect, who we believe to be 13, left the scene following the stabbing. After urgent inquiries, our officers arrested him and also recovered a weapon which we believe to have been used in the stabbing. The suspect was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and remains in custody for questioning by our officers. At this very early stage, we're keeping an open mind as to any motivation behind this attack. However, due to the surrounding circumstances, the investigation is now being led by officers from Counter-Terrorism Policing London, who are working closely with our local officers in response to this incident. The investigation has not currently been declared a terrorist incident, and the investigation team will now be working at pace to gather any evidence and to establish the full circumstances of what has happened as quickly as possible.
Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood said this evening, my thoughts and prayers are with them, their families and all those affected. While the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has said she is heartbroken about the stabbings. Now, moving on to our main news this evening. Keir Starmer was keen to basically put all this nonsense behind him today at a cosy town hall event in Hertfordshire. It's a volatile world out there, he joked, but the fallout from the Mandelson scandal continues.
I will never walk away from the mandate I was given to change this country. I will never walk away from the people that I'm charged with fighting for. and I will never walk away from the country that I love.
Fighting talk from the Prime Minister, who insisted his top team was strong and united despite ongoing tensions between Number 10 and the Health Secretary Wes Streeting. So today the Prime Minister removed the Labour whip from his former spin doctor. This is a guy called Matthew Doyle, because he supported a friend's political campaign 9 years ago, even though he had at that point received charges of paedophilia. That's the friend, to be clear, not Matthew. Well, tomorrow the Prime Minister faces his most important PMQs ever. Let me know your thoughts this evening on all of that. gbnews.com/your say. With me now is political advisor and author Stuart Thompson. Stuart, it was a bad week for Keir Starmer, but did today turn the dial a little in his favour? Did you see defiance or stubbornness?
Well, probably a bit of both, Bev, and thanks for having me on this evening. Yeah, I mean, absolutely what he did yesterday, how he reacted, the town hall today, the meeting he had with the Parliamentary Labour Party last night. This is a Prime Minister that isn't going to give in. He wants to keep going. He believes he got the mandate, which he did from the electorate at the last election, and he's going to keep going. And you could well argue that actually he's come out of this, ironically, in some ways, stronger, and certainly a lot stronger than he was yesterday morning. A united cabinet, all coming out and giving their support. A Parliamentary Labour Party that's given their support. Now, I think it would be naive to say that, you know, he's completely out of the woods. We've got the by-election coming up soon, the local election. So this isn't a done and dusted by any stretch. But I think it's an impressive shift of tone and a chance for the Prime Minister as a reset. So he's really put himself on a much better footing than he was certainly yesterday morning.
I mean, I find that quite difficult to agree with, Stuart, but I admire your optimism, I can't lie. But how has he done that then? Because to have his Chief of Staff going, to have his communications head going as well, these are big positions, and it does look a little like he's thrown some other people to the wolves just so that he can save his own skin here, doesn't it?
Well, they resigned rather than sort of being thrown to the wolves. But well, okay, we could argue that either way, but they're not there now, and there was a statement about being sacked, so they've walked away. The cabinet came around him. Now, under Boris Johnson, we saw a cabinet falling away, resignation, so he couldn't put a cabinet together. You could argue that could have happened to Keir Starmer yesterday. It didn't. The cabinet came around him very clearly and united. Now, as I say, this doesn't get him out of the woods by any stretch, but it just means that he's got a chance of going forward. And look, we're 18 months into a government. There is still another 2.5, 3 years, whatever it happens to be, before the next election, because that's up to the Prime Minister as well under our system. There's plenty of time to turn it around, and that's what he's bought. That's where he's got himself a little bit more time to show the country that actually, those polls can be turned around, that he can deliver an agenda that they can support and can make a difference. So, and he's, at the town hall, it was very clear that he's not going to walk away from this.
What do you think of this latest story that we've been breaking this evening about Matthew Doyle, his former spin doctor, who he's taken the whip off? And this is because he basically helped a friend in a political campaign 9 years ago, even though at the time his friend had been charged with paedophilia offences, and he said to Matthew Doyle, look, mate, I'm innocent, I'll be proved innocent, and so he stood by him, and then of course he changed his plea at the last minute and said he was guilty. Why has he taken the whip off him now?
I think, again, as soon as he's found out about that, he's taken action, hasn't he? That's the thing. Now, again, this partly goes back to the the vetting process, I guess, and what is passed on to the Prime Ministers and others when these decisions are made. So, but again, he's taken decisive action, and frankly, absolutely right too. And I don't think had any choice, particularly given, no choice, full stop, but particularly given the circumstances of the last few days.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. Thanks for joining me this evening, Stuart Thompson there, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joining the studio the Washington editor and columnist at The Times and The Sunday Times, Katie Balls. What a pleasure to see you, Katie. A lot going on back home in the UK, but it does reach our shores here in America, particularly these stories that are threaten, let's say, to bring down Keir Starmer. What's your opinion on this latest line that we've just had here about this Matthew Doyle?
Well, I think it comes down to the Prime Minister's judgment, because this story was already in the ether. It was the Sunday Times that first reported that Matthew Doyle had campaigned with a friend who had been charged with paedophilia, and that was ran in the Sunday Times, and they pressed on regardless. So what has changed between now and then, which means that Matthew Doyle, who clearly was a key aide, director of comms with Keir Starmer a long time, is no longer fit to have the Labour whip, and that comes down to two things. Either standards have changed since the Mandelson affair, or Keir Starmer no longer feels in a position where he can hold certain positions. Yeah. And I think perhaps he just doesn't feel he has the, the political strength to keep to what he was doing previously, because we have seen questions about his future. There's also, I think, a point that since the Peter Mandelson Epstein files dropping, obviously that has become a problem of a lack of standards in the Labour government, that they're feeling very sensitive to that. So I think they probably thought, if we don't do this, there's going to be pressure. We end up doing it in 2 weeks, so get it over with. Yeah. But Keir Starmer did seem to think this was okay a couple of weeks ago.
That's right. We were together last night meeting the new ambassador in town. You were, we'll talk about that in just a minute, but you were the last person to get this interview with Peter Mandelson. Just talk about that, Katie, because the backlash against you for that interview has been pretty intense towards you as the journalist, and you were accused of normalising his rehabilitation. Just tell us what happened, and we'll look at the front page of the magazine as well.
Well, I interviewed Peter Mandelson. It was long planned for the Times magazine. So with those things, you have a run time. And then we had a situation where it goes to press on very early on a Monday. Of course, these files drop on a Friday. There are 3 million files in the latest tranche, so people are sifting through them. And then in our original interview, we spoke a lot about Jeffrey Epstein, but of course at that point I needed to go back and put as much to him as I could, so I managed to get him on the phone. I think I'm probably the last journalist that has spoken to Peter Mandelson.
You may be the last journalist who ever speaks to Peter Mandelson.
Of course he is now speaking to the police, but at the time of press, everything that was out there at that point. So did he lobby on banker bonuses? Would he appear before Congress, as lots of people are asking now, was put to him? How did he explain this money that his partner had apparently taken? What about the money is allegedly in his accounts? And that's all in that interview. So I think the interview addresses everything that we knew at the moment.
Yeah, and in a way, the pictures, we're seeing the front cover here with the headline. I've had a lot of bad luck, no doubt some of it of my own making. It was just the timing of that was unfortunate, wasn't it? Because it looks like that article was trying to rehabilitate his reputation less than 24 hours after the Epstein files dropped.
Yeah, but I think also that's him giving his account of he had bad luck, and I think people would now say a lot of it is observation making, maybe nearly all of it, but that's now a police investigation. Yeah. But I think there is an argument that we should be asking these people questions and getting the answers, and then readers can make up their own mind.
100%.
And that now is probably the last account we're going to have of him. There's going to be, unless of course it ends up in a court. And I think that if you look at the interview, it's pretty forensic and going through lots of these Epstein allegations and also back to that relationship. And I don't think he's ever spoken that much in depth about his time with Epstein. Now, people are still going to want more for him, and I think some of those questions you would think, as events move, would you love to have more questions about, sensitive materials and so forth? But it doesn't cancel out what you have from that moment.
Now, last night we were fortunately 2 of 8 or so British journalists in this town invited to meet the new ambassador, Sir Christian Turner, and it was a very pleasant evening. He was very forthright, wasn't he? He's a career civil servant. He's worked for the Foreign Office for years. He's been stationed in Pakistan, in America for some period of time. What did you make of him, and how do you think that he will handle that very important role in this city?
Well, Well, I think what's interesting is obviously we've just been talking about Peter Mandelson, who was a dominant figure in British politics, particularly the Labour Party, for, 4 decades? And we're now seeing, perhaps because all these documents are going to have to be made public, the depth of that's going to become very clear. But it was unusual to have a political hire as ambassador. The new ambassador is not a political hire. It doesn't mean to say he lacks politics in terms of how he approaches things. But lots of people say he's typical civil service. Now, we met him briefly last night, a couple of hours perhaps, but I don't think he's not completely civil service. He seems to have views. He's had postings in lots of countries where they've been testing foreign affairs situations.
Yeah, and he, as a British High Commissioner to Pakistan, is born in Surrey, public school boy, English at Manchester University, same time as me, funnily enough, just there or thereabouts, was going to be the British ambassador to the UN in New York, and then at the last minute got the call to come over here. He doesn't shy away from a robust debate. While I was talking to him, I was just thinking, how will you do up against Marco Rubio and President Trump and maybe JD Vance? I think he will very much be able to hold his own. I came away from last night thinking that job is in a very safe pair of hands.
Yeah, I think there's always a question, which is how much do certain sides want to hear things they don't want to hear? And how do you go about landing that message? Because obviously there's a certain level of, you want to be able to get in the room, which often means people talk about the British and the French approach to this, to dealing with the US historically. The French often being more blunt, ruder, the British often being more flattering, even they don't always mean it completely. So they're in the room, and I think it's just getting that balance right. But I think we're entering a period now where, you know, if you look at UK public opinion polling, there are mixed views on America, and particularly, you know, Donald Trump changed his remarks on, you know, NATO and the troops and things, but it's the role of the ambassador to really keep the ear of the administration, but still being able to land the points that are very important to Britain and British people.
And he was saying, you know, I will go into those meetings and the Americans will sit back in their chair and they will say to me, what do you have for me? What do you have for me here in America? And I liked the fact that he was well aware of that he's going to be going into these negotiating situations. He was talking about trade and national security, particularly national security being one of the things that Britain still does really, really well. And he obviously wants us to spend more on defence. He wants us to be much more muscular militarily. And it will be really interesting to see how he goes. And how do you think he'll treat the press in this town? Compared to Mandelson?
Well, Peter Mandelson liked press attention, and he had many. You know, even when he left government, he was on the BBC. He was writing op-eds for The Spectator. You know, he was all around. I think, though, there is a sense that you do need to have a profile, and I think one of the challenges for the new ambassador is the UK press are always going to be interested in our man in Washington. But actually getting the interest of the US press, and for example, being on something like Fox News, and then the president might see you. There's often been that's how we get a quick route to the White House. So can he do that? We'll see in the coming weeks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Katie. Great to see you. Katie Bors from the Times and the Sunday Times there. Right, let me know what you think this evening. gbnews.com/your say. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live, incredibly disturbing images of a man in a balaclava approaching the house of American TV star Savannah Guthrie's mother. These have been released by the FBI only tonight, and this is 8 or 9 days really after she went missing. We're going to be joined by a former FBI agent to try to help us understand why they have only got these now. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Good morning, good evening. Let's move on to this main story that is gripping America here this evening. The disappearance of the host of NBC's Today show, Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy. It's entered now into its second week. And tonight, the FBI has released new video footage of somebody that Director Kash Patel has described as an armed individual appearing to have tampered with the camera at Nancy Guthrie's front door the morning of her disappearance. Savannah gave this update yesterday.
We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help.
And the President's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt gave this update this evening.
I was once again with the president. He and I were both reviewing the newly released surveillance footage from FBI in the Savannah Guthrie case on just this heartbreaking situation with respect to her mother. The president encourages any American across the country with any knowledge of this suspect to please call the FBI, who continue to assist state and local authorities who are leading this investigation on the ground. And once again, I will reiterate that the prayers of this entire White House are with Savannah and her family at this time. And we hope this person is found soon and that her mother is brought home safely.
So let's talk now to former FBI agent Michael Harrigan. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on this case, which has gripped America. It's incredibly chilling. First of all, how did you feel when you saw this footage today? And do you know, Michael, why it's taken so long for this to be released?
Well, the official reason is it took a while to process the data here. Realistically, likely the release of this video is more a tactic here by law enforcement in cooperation with the family to get more information out to the public so that the public will have a better opportunity to weigh in here, provide information that could lead to the identification of this individual. This is typical in these cases. They get to a certain point in the case, and if they have this type of video, they want to get it out there and see if they can spur additional information coming in.
My understanding was that she had this Amazon Ring camera or Google camera, which was recording the footage even though she didn't have a paid subscription. And so the FBI forced Google to release this footage. And there are rumours that they actually had to be subpoenaed to release this footage to the family, but this is the first time that they've seen it. Now, Michael, what difference will it have made that this was initially a missing persons investigation? Because would that have contaminated the crime scene? That they first initially thought maybe this is a little old lady who's got wandering off and disorientated in the middle of the night. How different could it have been in terms of the investigation?
Well, you know, a missing person investigation, and I've worked many of these in my past, is the first thing you look at is the victim. We call it victimology. You're looking at the victim to see what characteristics of the victim could have led to the missing person event happening. And with an elderly person, you're always looking at the potential of Alzheimer's, dementia, a person wandering away from the residence. But I think in this case, pretty early, the sheriff's department, when they responded to the residence, in pretty short order, they had found some pretty compelling evidence that there had been a crime there. Now, they called it a crime. They didn't say abduction at that point because they likely didn't know for sure. But there was blood evidence on the front steps, clearly to show that there was some foul play here and that there were circumstances likely beyond that to include maybe signs of forced entry or signs of a struggle inside the residence. All these things could have, I think, were there early in the case, and that the sheriff's department said, you know, clearly a crime had taken place there.
And what do you think they'll be doing now, Michael, behind the scenes? There are a few items on this person that may be identifiable. The tracksuit top, the sneakers, the rucksack. What will the FBI be doing now? Because they're in control of this investigation now rather than local law enforcement. That's my understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. What they do in these cases is they bring in experts from the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime. That's your typical profiling units. And they have experts within that those units that can analyze, you know, the written communication, the note that came in. They'll look at the video and they'll look at the behavior of this person. They'll look at the investigative information that's been collected to date and render an opinion. And help investigators focus down. One of the things they look at, when you look at that video, you see the person come up to the camera and they seem to look around a bit. And they look down and then they go to the alcove, to the exit there, and they're looking to find something to obscure the camera. Well, when you look at that, you say, well, this person really wasn't that prepared, were they? They should have known the camera was there, and likely if a person has planned out a kidnapping, they're going to come with the equipment to disable that camera quickly. Maybe tape over the camera or spray paint for that, or even knock the camera right off and disconnect it quickly. But this individual didn't do that. So those will be important signs that the behavioral analysts will look at to try to figure out what this person's background was, you know, what their motivation in going to the house was. Because you still have to, you know, you still have a lot of possibilities here of what the crux of the crime was here.
Yeah, that was such a strange thing to do, Michael. You saw the guy come up, see the camera. He's got a rucksack full of God knows what, a very heavy rucksack on his back. You'd think if he brought some sort of tape or something or a hammer just to smash it off. He didn't do that. He comes up to the camera. He's got at least one, if not a few pairs of gloves on, and obviously the balaclava as well. And then he walks back out, picks up some sort of foliage. He looks around to see if there's anything. He goes onto the path and he picks up sort of desert foliage. And then he kind of comes back and tries to obscure the camera with that, which is just the most amateurish and bizarre thing to do. Why would he be doing that as opposed to just kicking the camera off the wall, Michael? Any explanation?
Well, one explanation would be, you know, I think he hit the nail on the head, amateurish. This could be an individual who potentially was hired to do a kidnapping by somebody who may not be well versed in this, because there really aren't professional kidnappers out there in the United States generally, right? You see some of them down in Mexico and other countries where they are professionals because they kidnap in series multiple people as a monetary gain issue. They look to obtain ransom, and it's a business, right? Here in the United States, you're not seeing that. So this individual could have been hired, or the other possibility is he was there as a maybe randomly picked a house to go into and was looking to burglarize it. But the fact that he didn't knock the camera off the wall immediately is an indication anyway that maybe he didn't want to disturb Miss Guthrie in the house. He didn't want to make a lot of noise. So as an option, he decided, well, let me just cover the camera and then go from there. There's a lot of oddities here.
Extraordinary.
But
very,
absolutely.
very. Well, it's still evolving, Michael. We really appreciate your insight. Thank you so much. Former FBI agent Michael Harrigan there. I'm delighted to say I can bring my panel in now. Democrat strategist Richard Goodstein and Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dosha, are with me here this evening. So we know it'll be a feisty one. And down the line, Paul Cox, who hopefully has got over his giggles that he got at the end of Patrick Christie's show earlier. But listen, fellas, this is a serious, a bizarre story, Tim. As the days go by, it is not getting any clearer. It is just getting more and more bizarre.
Yeah, we've got all the weight of the U.S. government at this point trying to find out what's going on here. We've got some leads, but nobody is really coming up with that big piece of evidence that just points to who and what's going on here. And so we are left with a lot of questions, Bev. And I think you're on to something with the Nest company and having to go to Google potentially to get that footage. They had to do it through the back end because, like you said, she wasn't paying for it. So, but we do know that it's still being recorded. So it kind of brings up a little bit of, we have a Nest that isn't hooked up. So is Google recording?
Apparently so.
It's
apparently
a very interesting question.
Because the statement from Kash Patel today on Twitter, and I haven't got it to hand at the moment, but Kash put up a post on X that basically said, we have been working with private companies and other technological assistants in order to get this footage, Richard, which means the footage was there. You really do hope they didn't have to go to court to get this footage in a situation like this. There's some questions to be asked there, surely.
No doubt. Look, Tim says the full weight of the government is being brought on this. There would be a fuller weight if the FBI had gotten rid of some FBI agents and reassigned 3,000 to ICE and the Border Patrol. There'd be more FBI agents available to investigate this, but for those decisions. But one has to assume at this point they have as many as they need. Look, Savannah Guthrie is beloved, her mother even more so, and the fact that NBC is devoting the resources of the Today Show, which would have been covering the Olympics, and they put a lot of money into that, and they're kind of showing some great tenderness and kind of devotion to her to kind of tone that down a little bit. I think it says something good about their corporate decision.
Can I say something? Because Rich invoked me, and I just want to at least say, look, more people does not mean better results, Rich. I mean, this is one kidnapping instance. Thousands of people are kidnapped every single year, and this is a huge spotlight that we're focusing on right now. So, you only have so many resources, Rich. That's how it works. And just like the teachers union in school, more money doesn't mean better results. And so I just want to point that out to you.
Do without the FBI altogether.
Paul, it's one of these stories. A kidnapping has been going on since the medieval times. And yet there are some incredibly modern elements to this story, not least this CCTV footage, but also the fact that the ransom was requested in Bitcoin, untraceable Bitcoin. And I just wonder, it's a simple question, but how on earth must the family be feeling now as they go into the second week, knowing that their mum is unwell?
I think all of us can, and at the same time cannot understand how they're feeling. If this was any one of our parents or close family members, we'd all be feeling terribly anxious and very worried right now. It is fascinating watch it unfold as someone from the outside, in the sense of the technology involved, and the way the pacemaker and the Google Nest and the Ring doorbell footage. He looked incredibly amateurish, as you pointed out. It strikes me as this is some sort of, and I mean, it's only my speculation, of course, sort of lone wolf, weirdo type character that's that's decided to do this. Nothing about the way that man moved around told me that this is what he does. This, to me, really did feel like he was just chancing his arm.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are also questions about the direction to which he approached the house, as in he looks like he might have come on foot rather than in a car, which is what they thought. But there are more questions. We've got another FBI expert in the next hour as well who's going to address some of those, because of course if he did come on foot, did somebody then pick him up? Looking at the timeline, did somebody come in a car about 15 minutes later because otherwise how could he have moved Nancy Guthrie, who was 84 years old and of limited mobility? We'll be talking about that in the next hour as well. And of course we are watching the news lines to see if anything new is revealed or if the FBI announce that they have caught anybody. Right, still to come this evening, Bangor University Debating Society has banned Reform MPs from debating. What will my free speech loving Americans think of that? I'm going to be joined by one of those named in the Society's statements. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, this Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, a University Debating Society in Wales has ignited a free speech row. The Debating and Political Society at Bangor University refused to hold an event with Reform MP for Runcorn and Helsby, Sarah Pochin. Now, the invitation from the MP and the party advisor, Jack Anderton, was also turned down because of claimed racism, transphobia or homophobia displayed by the members of Reform UK. So with me now is political commentator and advisor to Reform UK, Jack Anderton. Jack, thank you so much for joining me. Right, so what do we conclude about this? This is just astonishing. It is satire has died when the Debating Society won't debate people that they disagree with.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like for those American viewers, it's almost like an SNL skit. A debating society refuses to actually debate with people. And yeah, what's happened is essentially I've been doing a university tour that was sort of inspired by Charlie Kirk. And Sarah Pocham called me up one day and said I'd like to do an event at Bangor University. She's campaigning in that area. So my team reached out to Bangor University's Politics and Debating Society, and they replied with a very rude message back, which you read to your viewers, essentially calling us racist, homophobic, transphobic, and hateful, and said that we would not be invited to campus and that we were banned. And I've been quite surprised actually at the storm that it has created, because you tend to find a lot of these issues that happen on universities, you know, speakers disinvited, events cancelled, but it's really seemed to have struck a nerve. And I think it's primarily because it is a university society essentially saying that the leading political party in the British opinion polls is inherently hateful and racist, which is essentially tarring millions of the supporters and voters with that exact same brush.
And we, of course, have contacted them to see if they would come on. I would love to have had somebody here from the Bangor Debating Society tonight. They wouldn't come and talk to us, Jack. Have you been able to have any sort of conversation with them, one-to-one on the phone or even across email, as to why they think this sort of detachment, this silence, is somehow a show of strength from them? Because that's what I would love to put to them. Why do they think not debating is somehow a win?
So unfortunately, I haven't had direct contact with the society. Again, I'd love to, and myself and Sarah would have engaged in a perfectly good faith, reasonable debate if we had been able to attend. I am in contact with the university administration. I have a call with them tomorrow. So hopefully we will be able to put on this event either way, with or without the Politics and Debating Society, as it's really, really important. You know, Bangor University is the oldest university in Wales. It's a prestigious university. This isn't sort of some random polytechnic that turned into a university. This is a historic institution, and it should treat free speech in the same way that it treats every other right.
And just briefly, how much positive response do you get when you go to universities? Do they all hate you?
Well, I've had a couple of interesting experiences at York University. I spoke at York University a couple of months back. Bev, I had 400 students come out marching the streets protesting me. There were about 40 students actually in the talk listening to me speak. So that was 400 students out marching and protesting against me. Edinburgh University, I had 3 venues cancel and a protest outside of my event. So unfortunately that wasn't able to take place, but I'm back there Friday. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well. But generally the students in the room have been supportive. They haven't been deterred by the protesters. And really they are just interested in hearing and discussing with someone who, I'd say for myself, has been involved in the insurgent political party.
OK, Jack, fascinating. Keep us posted, won't you, with how that conversation goes with Bangor University. Jack Anderson, their advisor to Reform UK and political commentator. Let's talk now to Professor Stephen Skultety, Professor of Philosophy at the University of Mississippi. Thank you so much, Stephen, for joining me. It was very last minute tonight, but I was so keen to get an American professor's voice on this, because you guys here very much seem to believe that free speech is the basis of learning and intellectual expansion. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But what do you make of it when you hear that one of the UK's top universities is banning a sitting member of Parliament from debating because they disagree with her politics?
It's just a sign that higher education is often becoming more political. And we're using ideas like hate and racism and accusations like that. It's not only to shut down debate, but it's to make sure that the institution only represents one political position and only allows one political position to be accommodated or find voice on university campuses.
Do you find that students coming through your door have to be encouraged to even think about both sides of an argument? Or do they walk through the door, they think they know it all? I mean, students have always been a bit like that, right? But they walk through the door, they think they know it all, and nobody can change their mind. What's gone wrong here, Stephen, in terms of intellectual growth?
So I'm a professor of philosophy. I'm also the director for the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom. And I think about this a lot because the students who do come through my door, a lot of times they think they understand the world. They think everything is clear cut. They've only been listening to certain voices on social media, and they're just in an echo chamber. And it's a real eye-opening experience to them that there's intelligent, thoughtful, intellectual people on all sides of these major debates that we're having in our countries. And that's why this story in particular is so sad to me. It's one thing to say that there are some debates that are so ridiculous that you don't need to have them on university campuses. We don't need to be debating whether the moon is made of cheese or other just preposterous things. But liberal democracies, we're having these major fundamental debates where there are intelligent and brilliant people on all sides articulating the views of tens of millions of people. And it's just outrageous that people would try to shut down those fundamental debates that we're having about the nature of citizenship, country, and sovereignty, and try to push them out of a university context. So it's tragic.
Yeah, it is. I'd love you to come back another day, Professor Stephen Skultety there, Professor of Philosophy at the University of Mississippi, and a voice of reason. Ladies and gentlemen, he can use the University of Bangor as an example to his students tomorrow, can't he? Now, University of Bangor do say the views expressed by societies are their own and do not reflect university policy. Bangor University remains politically neutral and supports freedom of speech. Well, in that case, you should give them all a detention this week and haul them into the office to find out why they made that decision. Right, still to come on The Late Show Live this evening.
This is the most vulnerable the British monarchy has ever been. I mean, I heard they were asking the Queen questions about the Epstein class. They ought to ask the King and Queen questions, and maybe this will be the end of the monarchy.
End of the monarchy. Well, that's what one congressman in this town has suggested as the Epstein saga continues to torment the royals. We'll be discussing that in just a minute. This is The Late Show Live only on GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in, and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Nick has got in touch at home. I see the left-wing cowards at Bang University are running scared of reform and won't debate, probably because they know they will lose and the vast majority of British citizens will vote reform. Keep your messages coming. Now, Democrat Representative Ro Khanna has called on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to testify before Congress, emphasising the current Epstein-induced crisis is so bad for the royal family that it might be the end of them.
This is the most vulnerable the British monarchy has ever been. I mean, I heard they were asking the Queen questions about the Epstein class. They ought to ask the King and Queen questions, and maybe this will be the end of the monarchy. Stripping Andrew of a title is not enough. I mean, Andrew needs to come before our committee and start answering questions.
Let's talk now to historian Alexander Larman to find out, is this the weakest the royal family has ever been? Alexander, are they at risk of being destroyed by the Andrew Epstein scandal?
Good evening. I think that's an exaggeration. I think we're seeing it also from a very American perspective there, because ultimately the royal family has proved quite resilient over the last few centuries. And I don't think we're talking about a scandal that's going to envelop the entire royal family at the moment, because obviously the main person who has been accused of crimes, which he denies very strongly, is the former Prince Andrew. So I don't think that, although it's very easy to stand up and make a very dramatic statement to a group of reporters in America that this is the end of the British monarchy, I don't actually think that's necessarily true at the moment. But however, this is a scandal and a situation that is changing all the time, and you can really see that man does hand on misery to man, doesn't he? I mean, it's really the case that this is deepening constantly. Things are just getting worse and worse and worse.
And do you think that, it was pretty unprecedented when King Charles came out this week and said that he would support the police in any sort of investigation. To say that under these circumstances, Alexander?
Well, it's, as with a lot that the King's saying, it's working on two separate levels, isn't it? Because on the one hand, it's unprecedented. It's really surprising that the King would be saying something like this. It's really surprising that he's basically said to Thames Valley Police, come on, boys, I'm going to open Buckingham Palace for you and come in and rifle through whatever you fancy. On the other hand, what else is he going to say? Because one of the main hallmarks of his reign has been transparency and has been a greater sense of outreach. And of course, this is the greatest outreach of them all, that when you've got to let the police into your house to try and support what might end up being a prosecution against your younger brother, then ultimately he doesn't have many other options, because he cannot be seen at a time where there hasn't been any kind of upsurge in republicanism, there hasn't been any kind of movement towards people wanting the royal family gone, but also it is a febrile and tense situation, isn't it?
It really is. Thank you, Alexander. Alexander Larman there, royal historian. Just tell me, Tim Dosher, in 5 seconds, that congressman, does he know what he's talking about?
Does Ro Khanna? Depends on what weed is on sale in California. He'll know what he's talking about.
What a terrible allegation.
Ro Khanna clearly wants to be on GB News.
And
so he's going to be on GB News.
And on that bombshell, we're going to go to the weather. Back with more of that in just a minute.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office. Changes to the weather are on their way, but for today at least, more wet weather is expected widely across the UK, with a colder feel across Scotland and much of the rain over hills turning to snow before the day is out. But it's a wet picture for virtually the whole of the UK, aside from the far north and northwest of Scotland and the south of England, and where there will be some drier and brighter weather at times, albeit still with some showers here and there. As you can see, a lot of rain elsewhere. Persistent spells of wet weather continuing across eastern Scotland could cause some issues given the saturated nature of things. But by the end of the day, actually, as the cold air begins to arrive above 300-400 metres, we're talking about snow over the Grampians, and that will come down even lower on Wednesday night into the start of Thursday. So cold end to the day for Scotland, feeling cold in the wind as well for Northern England into Northern Ireland, but further south we're in the milder air and actually some cloud breaks as we go into Wednesday evening for South Wales into parts of the central and southern part of England, but some rain will skirt the far south and southeast, clearing away into the near continent. Meanwhile, Thursday and the early hours brings a lot more rain once again to Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England, especially the northeast as well as eastern Scotland. Showery rain elsewhere, a lot of cloud cover, so generally a mild start in the south on Thursday, but a colder feel for Scotland, for northern and eastern England, with a biting easterly wind starting to arrive. And that means there'll be some sleet and snow showers for the north and east of Scotland, increasingly so through Thursday. Rain rather than snow through Northern Ireland into much of northern England, parts of Wales and the Midlands. In the southwest, it's brighter for a time, further showers to Cornwall by the end of the afternoon. And then during Friday and the weekend, it turns colder, but also a little drier.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America. Now, Have a look at these incredibly disturbing images. This is of a man in a balaclava who approached the house of American TV star Savannah Guthrie's mother, released this afternoon by the FBI. Now, this comes nearly 10 days after she went missing. Why are we just seeing these now? We're going to be joined by a former FBI agent who will shed as much light as possible on this gripping but distressing story. And breaking in the last few moments, TMZ, which is the channel which received the ransom note, is reporting that it has seen activity for the first time in the Bitcoin account listed in the first ransom note. The website is saying, for various reasons, we are not going to reveal the amount, but the activity happened in the last 25 minutes. We'll bring you what we know on that. Also tonight.
No longer will our government label the speech of our own citizens as misinformation or disinformation, which are the favorite words of censors and those who wish to stop the free exchange of ideas and, frankly, progress. We have saved free speech in America.
Of free speech. A bill has been introduced here today which should shield citizens from foreign censorship laws. We're going to be discussing that with a top lawyer. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Remember, no breaks this hour. I'm delighted to say that my panel are still with me. Democrat strategist Richard Goodstein and the Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dosha and Paul Cox down the line. Now, I didn't have enough of you gentlemen in the first hour. I'd like a lot more in this, but we've got some very big stories to get through, of course. Shall we start, first of all, with this story that is gripping America? We've just had that latest line there from TMZ. Now, tell us who they are, Richard. Who is TMZ and why are they relevant to this story?
TMZ, as we call it in the US, it is an outfit that basically gets a hold of any kind of video from people. It basically takes from all comers. Some of it's legit, some of it's not, but they have kind of no qualms about putting it into the public domain. And in this case, let's hope it does us some good. But that's...
I would also add that TMZ has their claws into almost every single possible angle in this country. They have sources all over the place. They will pay sources for stories, so they can actually serve a purpose in this case to find them. And I would bet that they see probably an angle in helping out Savannah Guthrie, being so close to NBC. TMZ, has their own little empire, but they also really, really thrive on coverage from national sources of media like NBC, where Guthrie is, and so it's a very interesting development here.
Let me, Paul, read this tweet. This was from Kash Patel, the FBI director, today, because one of the mysteries has been why we're only seeing this footage now. Because if this had been released 24 hours after that woman had gone missing, poor Nancy Guthrie, maybe somebody would have identified this individual. And this is what Kash Patel said. Over the last 8 days, the FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department have been working closely with our private sector partners to continue to recover any images or video footage from Nancy Guthrie's home that might have been lost, corrupted or inaccessible due to a variety of factors, including the removal of recording devices. The video was recovered from residual data located in back-end systems, which, to my technologically semi-literate ears, sounds like these images were somehow in a cloud or in a database somewhere, but the family didn't have access to them, Paul. There's got to be some serious questions asked about why this was not seen sooner.
Yes. I mean, I think it's quite fortunate that they were able to be found in the back end, by the way. So whilst it wasn't captured locally, it was captured in the back end. That obviously asks a bunch of questions around privacy and how easy it is to access. But in this particular case, thank God that that has become available, because that is going to provide really strong evidence at some point, hopefully, and it sees the return of this woman. it's fascinating because we're drawing a line here between sort of personal and privacy and sovereignty that the citizens of the US value highly. We value it here. We just don't get it afforded the same way here as they do in the US. They really do value it there. And the fact that we need to, or they need to access this information incredibly quickly, because this isn't, you know, this is a kidnapping, but of an elderly person who is without medication, who has known ailments, and goodness only knows how she is coping at the moment. You know, I pray to God that she sees a safe return.
Yeah.
But I don't know how this resolves itself. It's interesting to see there's been some activity in the Bitcoin account. Bev, not that I know a lot about Bitcoin at all.
Yeah. Well, me neither. Which of us on the panel is an expert on Bitcoin? Any of us?
Not me.
Tim?
Well, I think the point of Bitcoin is that it's untraceable and it's hard to, you know, a lot of criminals can use Bitcoin, and that's exactly why they probably are choosing Bitcoin. And so I think that, you know, if you have, you know, a Bitcoin wallet, like it sounds like this guy does, you can work with the company to get some information on it, but it sounds like you're going to have to do exactly what they did with Google and say, please give us this. Please give us this information.
But I wonder how they can say, and if any of you know at home, do let me know on the Your Say site, but how can they say that there has been activity in this Bitcoin account, Richard? Do you have any idea how you can?
You would have to be an insider, right? I mean, one thing that TMZ specializes in is, as Tim said, they pay people, they have their sources, and they could get behind the kind of the curtain. And it wouldn't surprise me if they've identified employees and they kind of got to somebody who said, for a price, okay, I'll let you know this.
Yeah,
that would be my guess.
The fact that TMZ are saying, for various reasons, we're not going to reveal the amount, but the activity happened in the last 25 minutes. Now, does that mean, Paul, potentially, that a ransom's been paid?
Potentially, something's been put in there. Maybe there's a test. I mean, $8 billion, isn't it? Well, the original request. I mean, I'm not sure even.
Million, I think. 8 million, wasn't it?
Billion. So I say billion. It's definitely million. I meant to.
Well, I think they started lower and then they went up to 6 million, I think, didn't they?
Right. Yeah, million. Sorry, billion. That would be incredible. But you know, even very famous people in the US don't necessarily have access to that sort of cash immediately. Yeah. So. It's very difficult. So there could be a test going on. They could be testing the validity of that account to see if they do put something in there. They could just you know, they could just put $1 in there for all I know, just to see if it is actually an active account.
If it's genuine. OK, let's talk to another former FBI agent here. Thanks, guys, for now. John McVeigh joins me as we hear this breaking news from TMZ this evening. Good evening, John. Thank you very much for joining me. We have all confessed that none of us here this evening are experts on Bitcoin. I don't know whether you are as well, whether you have any understanding of that statement from TMZ saying that there has been activity in the Bitcoin account. This is very much, John, one of the oldest crimes in history, to kidnap another person and ask for a ransom, and yet it has this very modern twist. And I wonder how hard that makes it for law enforcement.
Well, you know, you have to look at it as, you know, just like you said, you know, kidnapping for ransom is extremely rare now. You know, it's not like you're sending the note to the family and they're going to make a drop at the street down the way and all kinds of things like that. So, you know, the crypto thing, and I've seen in my career that a lot of these Bitcoin ransom requests are fake. I had some stuff when I worked cases where people would disappear, or, you know, a child would be missing, and the next thing you know, the police department's getting a ransom note emailed requesting money. So I don't necessarily have too much credence that the ransom is associated to basically her being kidnapped. But, you know, she is missing. So somebody clearly took her, either or dead. So, yes, you have some type of kidnapping.
Because, John, seeing this footage, in your experience, when you see that individual with the balaclava on and the rucksack, on foot, making his way to the door, amateurish, putting the foliage from the garden on the front of the camera, which obviously didn't remain there, I don't think. What's your assessment of that? Because if this is just an opportunistic burglar, Why would he take Nancy Guthrie with him?
Yes. So, you never want to assume. And I've listened to so many people talk, and everybody's saying, well, the way he approached the house and the way he did this. And it seems like a lot of people are assuming that this is him prior to breaking into the house. And, when you do investigations, you never assume. So it's a possibility that the crime's already been committed, and maybe he returned later that night to get rid of the body, or maybe after he did whatever he did inside the house, he's now scouring the outside of the house to see if there's anything that could maybe link him to the house. Because clearly, there's no breaking in the front door. They never had any indication the front door was broken into. So, you don't want to assume here that this is before everything happened. This could be clearly after.
A really interesting point, actually, John. And I don't know whether you're familiar with this area. Our British audience, majority of people certainly will not be. Just give us an idea of the kind of landscape there is in this particular area and how easy it would be to get away from the scene, potentially with a passenger in a vehicle.
Well, as I've reported, I don't live in Arizona, but, I've been there numerous times. Training classes in Tucson, and it's a desert. It's basically a desert, and as you can see from the photos you're showing, there's no grass, there's a lot of shrubs, there's a lot of bushes, there's a lot of cactus, there's a lot of wild animals, and they have an ordinance in Tucson about no lights. So there's no street lights, and everybody basically keeps their lights down so that they can see the night sky. So, you easily could park there in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning and carry a body out and put it in the car without anybody seeing it, and then drive off. And if somebody, if she was dead when they left the house, they could have taken her somewhere out into the desert and buried her, or left her out there. There's all kinds of wild animals. If she was alive and they took her, then they could have easily gone to some location or some house or something like that, and that's where she could be being held. If you want to go with the ransom story,
when you put it like that, it's like. Sorry, John, go on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, when you put it like that, it is a needle in a haystack, isn't it? But what will they do now? What will the FBI be doing now? They've got these images, which will be widely circulated. What will their focus of attention be on now? I don't even know where you would start, John.
So, you always start with what you've got looking at you. And look, I'm pretty much convinced it's a male just by the physical features. Clearly looks like he's got some type of mustache, goatee type from looking at a couple of the stills. The FBI probably, depending on how long they had this, has the ability to track down items of clothing and things like that, and to find out where they were purchased. The backpack looks kind of unique. It has a lot of reflectors on it. The jacket also a little bit unique. I don't know about the gloves. The gloves could be some type of latex glove over top due to the fact that it's black and white. Even the mask, you're looking for those type of masks, and they may go to these stores in the nearby area and see if anybody's purchased them, or go to the manufacturer. A lot of times, I've had cases too before where you go and you find an item and you find out that they produce 25,000 a month. So that's not really helping you, but it's good to show these pictures, because somebody may say, oh yeah, I know my neighbor has that jacket, or my brother, or somebody like that. I think the one big thing in there is the person's walk. They appear to be a little bit pigeon-toed out, kind of like a hunched over. It looks like he clearly is looking down as he's coming in, but I don't know if he's looking down because he's looking for a step, because it is pitch black there, and they say you can stick your hand out in front of your face and not see it. So you want people to look for those type of things of movement and see, does that look familiar to you? Does that look like your neighbor? Does that look like somebody? Did you all of a sudden have a neighbor that used to have a beard and now he's clean shaven, especially now that this is released? So I think it's going to be very important. I imagine the FBI and the sheriff's office are probably getting inundated with calls on people. And look, there's a lot of lookalikes. And I've always said that, you know, just because you're not in that area and you recognize that backpack or you recognize that type of jacket, you know somebody, let's say you live in California or Texas, you know, if this turns out that it was targeted for Savannah because of who she is, and they figured they were going to do something to the mother, you know, people travel long distances to commit these crimes. And so even if you're living in another state or somewhere else and you think that that person looks like somebody you know, make the call. You know, the agents will get out there or the police will get out there and try to interview the person and find out where they were and what they were doing. Because you never know, you get that one little call.
Okay, fascinating. Thank you, John. Former FBI agent John McVeigh. It might just be one little call. It sounds trite, guys, but even looking at that, the rucksack looks sort of shiny and new. Like, it looks brand new. We don't know what's packed inside it, but it looks like somebody who's got the gear to do a job, but he's pretty bloomin' amateur while he's doing it.
It's really interesting. You read the same TMZ story where they're talking about the Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And you see that when they analyze the letters that the ransom notes were written to and they were given to the local TV stations there, it leads them to believe, law enforcement officials tell TMZ that it leads them to believe that this is a local person due to the knowledge that the person has with the TV stations. This is a big thing because, you know, Tucson is big, but it's not that big. About 1 million people in the metropolitan area. You know, you show footage like that, you can actually find somebody, I think.
One of our viewers, John at home, has said, Bev, so with Bitcoin, all transactions can be tracked. Each transaction has something similar to a serial number or a transaction number attached to it. If you have or know the wallet address of the Bitcoin wallet, you can track every single transaction that comes and goes to that wallet. And there are loads of websites that can track Bitcoin transactions. But that then begs the question, I thought you would be paid in Bitcoin because it's not traceable. Again, it's a learning curve for us, this, isn't it?
And is this guy an amateur? If so, he may not know that.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that's the problem. Let's say it was an abduction. And then, you know, it's like a bad movie. You know, he's got somebody, he wants this money, he thinks Bitcoin, he's heard about it, that's a way to, it's kind of clean. Now, what's he do with her? How does he really hand her over so that it can't be traced back to him? So let's hope it's merely that, right?
Yeah.
And the fact is, this FBI, Kash Patel, has jumped the gun in many respects, has done things himself in an amateurish kind of way. Charlie Kirk, he said we had a person of interest before they did, et cetera. So I think we will look back and say maybe the FBI could have jumped on this, gotten images like this out. Look, this is a residential area, not very densely populated. There's probably not CCT all over the place like there might be in downtown London.
Yeah, working with our partner, says Kash Patel, as of this morning, this was today, law enforcement has uncovered these previously inaccessible new images showing an armed individual appearing to have tampered with the camera at Nancy Guthrie's front door the morning of her disappearance. What we didn't point out when we were looking at the footage, actually, is that there is a gun being carried on the front of his trousers in a really unusual way. I don't know how much you guys carry guns or know much about carrying guns. I know Paul Cox in London isn't something that he's used to, but if you can see it there. And apparently people in, what I heard an expert on TV say today, in the concealed carry community carry their gun like that. What is the concealed carry community? Does that mean criminals?
Well, that's not a concealed carry, that's an open carry. So what you have is you have a couple things. One, in certain states, you can carry a weapon as long as it's visible without having a certain permit. If it's concealed, you have to have a permit to keep, which means you're hiding it. And so this is an open carry, which was really interesting that he would be so law-abiding to have an open carry versus a concealed carry.
Hang on, run that by. Do you understand that, Richard? This is beyond the knowledge set of me and Paul Cox. This is such an alien culture to carry a gun.
Yes. So weeks ago we got into this whole talk about guns. The fact that you even have such a thing like concealed carry or open carry, I think, is just crazy. It's why we have, you had these stabbings If it was the U.S., those people would have been shot and killed.
It is wild to us. But just explain that to me. So that's the legal way to carry a gun.
Well, it depends. If he has one, you don't know what he's trying to do there. If he has it there. First of all, I don't know many people that carry a gun right at the front of their
on their
waistband
crotch.
like that.
If you're listening on the radio, it's very strange.
It's very almost amateurish, like everything else he's doing is amateurish. Okay, so there's that. But if he is doing it, and I don't know the exact law in Arizona, but I do know that their carrying permits in Arizona are definitely lax compared to where we are in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So you could theoretically walk around town with a gun on your hip, as long as people can see it, it's totally legal. Now, if you want to conceal it and put it in your pants or hide it in your jacket, you have to have a special permit to do that. You have to have a carrier's permit.
Can we just talk about the idiocy of this discussion? This is a guy who's either abducting or killing somebody, and the fact that he's going to think about whether he's got a permit, this is nonsense.
Well, I'm simply answering her questions. I'm saying he looks like an amateur with the way he's wearing his gun, and any law-abiding, respecting carrier would never carry a gun like that.
But you know
never carry a gun like that.
But you know what people would say? Well, if Nancy Guthrie had a gun at her disposal, she'd still be here now.
Guns are not used that way, like hardly ever, right? Most guns are used in the home against people who live in the home, either by suicide or some kid grabbing it or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's very strange, and it is bizarre. I agree with you to be talking about the gun like this, but it clearly gives some sort of clue. Maybe as to who this guy is. Is that not a bit of a gangster way to carry your gun? I think if you gave that to some of the teenage boys in London, that's probably how they would carry their gun, right in their crotch like that.
Well, they'd probably put it in their pants.
That's what I've seen. Yeah, you're right.
He actually has a holster there. But again, I'm not going to say that's very easy to draw and then go like that. If you're going to draw, you want to draw from the side.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Let me bring you a little update for you on this story. An FBI official has told NBC News that tips increased dramatically after the agency released a video today that we've just been seeing. Now, that is, of course, tips in the British sense of the word, as opposed to tip off to the police, as opposed to the American sense of the word, with tips means something a little different here. But that is good news that NBC are saying people have been getting in touch with the FBI to give them leads on who that individual might be. Right, let's move on. In a move to stop online censorship, a bill was introduced called the Wyoming Granite Act, and it has just cleared its final hurdle. Now, this is part of an effort in America to shield citizens from foreign censorship laws. Let me get the full lowdown from tech and free speech lawyer Preston Byrne. Now, Preston, this was brought to my attention because I saw you tweeting about it today. Now, why is this cause for celebration as far as you're concerned? Explain it to us.
Sure. So this is it's the first procedural hurdle. We've got a couple more hurdles to go. We've got to get it through committee and then get it through a floor vote. But this is the outcome of for government timelines, a very swift process where we managed. So I represent, as you know from our conversation last week, all of the targets of the UK Online Safety Act in the US. We understood that taking on the UK in court repeatedly was not a scalable solution, and what we needed to do was develop a shield law to protect Americans from foreign censors. And so I proposed that shield law on my blog on October the 18th. We had a bill in Wyoming by November the 20th. That bill was introduced informally at the end of January. It cleared the first procedural hurdle today. We have a carbon copy of that bill in New Hampshire, and also the federal government is reportedly considering introducing a version of its own. So this kind of solution, a structural solution to censorship, is really the only thing that's going to be a lasting solution to censorship, and that's why this is cause for celebration.
And what does that mean then, that it's a shield law, Preston?
So there's a shield and a sword. So the shield says that foreign censorship orders are not enforceable in the United States, which is something we already know, but this just confirms it very explicitly in writing. And the second thing that it says no American executive branch agency, or rather a Wyoming executive branch agency, can cooperate with foreign censorship orders in serving them or effectuating the service on American citizens. The other part of it is the sword piece, where it says that any foreign censorship agency, and the state, the agency, the individual responsible, an international organization like the European Union or European Commission, if they communicate a threat to an American citizen, to fine them or penalize them for their constitutionally protected association or expression, the American citizen can bring a federal court action in Wyoming in the Cheyenne federal courts for the greater of $1 million, 10% of the targeted entity's U.S. revenue, including taxes, levies, and fines, or the amount of the threatened fine. So in the UK's case, for example, they were threatening Americans with $25 million or 18 million pound fines. They send one letter per occurrence. We respond with a lawsuit, and every communication into the United States invites a $25 million lawsuit in response.
So it really is a huge win. As you say, you're not there yet. But how optimistic are you that this will get pushed through, at least to a starting point in Wyoming? And second question, who will be really unhappy about this tonight?
Well, in terms of how happy we are and optimistic, it was a very close vote. It really came down to the wire. There were 57 votes in favor and 5 votes against. So we won by an enormous. This was an enormous margin, and gives us some pretty considerable hope for optimism that we're going to get this over the line. Who would be most upset about this? I imagine in Brussels and London tomorrow morning, there are going to be some hard conversations, particularly over at Ofcom, where I have communicated to Ofcom directly that we developed this law as a direct response to their intrusions into the United States and the threats that they directed towards my clients. So if the UK censorship industrial complex is looking for someone to blame for this American response, they really only need to look in the mirror.
Preston, I think you're a genius, actually, and I think you're blazing a trail for all of us in the UK that want to preserve free speech. I'm so grateful. I just want a little response from you tonight. I don't know whether you've seen, there's a story that Bangor University Debating Society, one of the biggest universities, particularly in Wales, but in the UK, has banned Reform MPs from debating at their society, saying that they are homophobic, transphobic and racist because of their political views about secure borders, etc. When you hear that about our academia, what's your response?
Well, I think, student groups have if they were in the United States, they'd have a right to extend an invitation or decline to send an invitation to anyone they wish. So I don't, from a strict First Amendment perspective, I think that's totally acceptable. In terms of, free and open debate, universities on both sides of the pond are not known for being places where free and open debate happens anymore. But they're a student group. They're entitled to invite who they want to invite or disinvite who they want to disinvite. I think there's a problem when public money is used to discriminate against whose voices are heard. But yeah, it's not something that I lose too much sleep over.
Okay, well, we lose a lot of sleep over it here, but actually 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm thinking who's going to save us from this nightmare, Preston Byrne, free speech lawyer, you are the man I think of. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Let me talk to my panel about this as well. Paul Cox, let me bring you in on this. I'm sure you share my sense of exhilaration when I know that there are individuals like that who are fighting on behalf of us in the UK, even though he doesn't realise it. It will have positive effects on those of us who don't believe in censorship here, Paul.
It's incredible. And I echo what you said about Preston as well. Fascinating. I was really, really intently listening to what he said. Obviously, it's a subject close to my heart. And free speech is, the last bastion of free speech is the US. It's the home of free speech. We don't have free speech here. We have kind of speech that's prescribed to some degree. I know what I can and can't say openly in public. And even as a stand-up comedian, there are things that I have to make sure I'm careful about. Whereas if I did any one of those things in the US, I'd probably be very well protected. We do, of course, and we probably should mention them, have the Free Speech Union in this country. And that's an independent private body set up by Lord Tony Young in order to help provide legal support for maybe someone like me who is right-leaning, supports the sort of policies Reform are interested in, and if I had an employer that wasn't GB News, for instance, and shared that, I could quite easily lose my job in this country just for stating what 30% of the population in the adult UK population support at the moment. So it's fascinating to hear. I'm glad that work's going on, and it's almost a shame that it has to carry on this way, but I'm glad it is.
Richard, we have about 12,000 people a year, as the latest figures, that are arrested for social media posts in the UK. Only about 1,100 of them will actually be prosecuted, but it is taking up so much time. We live in a country where only 5% of household burglaries ever get solved. Is it good that we look to America to help us in this regard, Richard?
Well, I do think America is the last best as regards free speech. And Preston's right. If it was a university here, the student union would have a right to do what it wants. I would say there in Bangor, where they made a mistake, was simply saying why they weren't allowing reform to speak. They should have just said, no, thank you. And the university, if they were smart, should have said, we'll host reform. We don't need the student union to do it. We'll do it as a university. So this actually is something that could have been remedied, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is. So yes, I think it's a kind of misallocation of resources to be prosecuting people for violating free speech. Incidentally, say that message about free speech, send it to Elon Musk and X, because they're big on censorship these days about people who aren't really keen on Donald Trump.
Tim.
Yeah, they're keen on actually allowing Donald Trump people to speak, unlike the previous owner of Twitter that was banning and shadow banning and doing everything possible. But look, I think in terms of the Bangor situation, this is a good thing for reform. This is a great thing for reform because it continues to prove that elitists and ivory tower universities have zero respect for the opposite side, and it is a rallying cry to say, come alive, come awake, let your voice be heard, and do it at the ballot box. How about? This is a big one for them, and I think it's going to continue to only just reverberate. Look, Brexit didn't happen in a vacuum. It's still there. It's still there, and the elites are going to see that soon.
Students do stupid things. They're not the elites yet. They actually are,
but they think they are, and they certainly showed that in this.
And it's always the left, Richard. I hate to draw this generalisation, but it's always the left who won't actually have the debate. That's what drives me mad. It's like, come on, if you want to convince us of your position, grow a spine, grow a pair, and take on the debate, Richard. Not everyone has got a pair like you,
A pair
Richard.
of what?
I don't disagree that the left would be wise and it would benefit from taking on all comers debate-wise. There's no question about it, whether it's in the U.S., UK, or anywhere else. I think that's a mistake. Hopefully something that will be remedied in short order.
Well, you need to set a good example.
And he does.
He does.
He's
he
very
really,
good at it.
really
Yes,
does.
he does.
Absolutely. We are going to have, in fact, I'm going to tell you a story that happened to me when I was in DC in the snow, and I was approached by someone who didn't like GBNews. I'll tell you what happened with that in a minute. But let's have a quick look at your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News. Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Apologies for the fact that that weather had no sound. I've no idea why that was. It's just raining, raining, raining. Whenever my American guests are on here, they say, I don't know why you bother saying the weather. They think it's hilarious. They just look at the rain and go, it just rains all the time. Right, let's have a look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, shall we? The Daily Telegraph are leading with this story that broke only a few hours ago. This is a terror probe into school stabbing. This is 2 school children, 13-year-olds, who've been stabbed. We don't know their condition as of yet. They were extremely unwell as this story went to press just a couple of hours ago, stabbed by another 13-year-old. The Metro are leading with going down in flames. Now, this is somebody... I genuinely can't tell you what this story is about. Do you boys have any idea? Apparently, somebody who was a Home Alone menace is locked up. Don't know what that is. The iPaper. Starmer's ex-number 10 spin doctor loses the Labour whip over the link to the sex offender. We covered that at the top of the show. I don't think that's quite the smoking gun that some journalists would have you believe in terms of Keir Starmer. I think it's a bit of a distraction. The Guardian, Streeting still intent on deposing PM despite united front, say allies. This is going to be an interesting one to watch. Of course, The Guardian being our left-wing newspaper, what are they up to there, causing more ructions within the Labour Party? The Mail. Teen held for terror stabbing of boys 12 and 13. Apologies, I thought they were both 13. One of them was 12, one of them was 13. The attacker is reported to have shouted Allahu Akbar as he stabbed these two young boys in the neck in a classroom. The Daily Express are leading with Labour's taxes are a shameful assault on the high streets. Probably the most important headline tomorrow. That is what people are feeling. In fact, the Prime Minister said this himself. He didn't talk about his taxes being shameful, but he talked today about the fact that if you don't feel you've got more money in your pocket at the end of the month, they are not doing their job properly. Let's see if he does anything about it. The Sun, I was destroyed by Strictly. Now, I'm sure it's a terrible situation for the guy. This is Robin. He said he overdosed and he left a suicide note saying, I was destroyed by Strictly. It seems like a very strange private story which is being extrapolated. This is part of the Sun's, I will say, campaign in inverted commas to throw a bit of mud at the BBC's, one of the BBC's most popular reality shows, and the Mirror. Leading with Leo was gentle and kind and the heartbreak will never end. Now, this is not the stabbing that we've been talking about. This is a boy a 12-year-old boy who was killed. It was in court and the teenager was laughing in court about the fact that he'd killed that little boy there. Right. What are we going to talk about now then, fellas? Shall we discuss this story about mobile phones? So, restrictive school phone policies are apparently not linked to better student mental well-being. This is according to a study that I haven't seen the detail of, so this is a little bit annoying, but it's managing phone use. They're saying it can take schools more than 100 hours a week. So researchers at the University of Birmingham are now saying that they found no significant difference in things like worry, sadness and optimism for year 8 and 10 students if they have lax mobile phone policies as opposed to restrictive mobile phone policies in schools. I think, Paul Cox, that is a piece of rubbish. I'd like to see their research because I can guarantee you that kids are less anxious if you take their mobile phones off them.
Yeah, almost certainly. We have no idea. I mean, anyone could write that story without showing the data. And at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about the mental health, although it's incredibly important. It's about the focus. That kids, I mean, the idea of having, I mean, I was distracted at school by anything, girls, football, anything. But the idea that if I'd had a mobile phone at high school, that would have been, I don't think I would have learned anything. So the idea that they have these things around in the first place is a big issue. My daughter's just finished, she's doing her A-levels. She had access to school. She'd often message me or her mum during the school day. So usually about something she was concerned about, and I wasn't too upset about that. But the idea that they always had access to it was always a slight worry to me. But I can't believe this as a statistic. I'm sure that if you take kids away from mobile phones for long enough, they are much better off than they are with them, that's for sure.
Who funded this study? Was this a Huawei-funded study that was then placed in the hands? I mean, come on, this can't be right.
Vodafone, iPhone, pick one.
I mean, every parent knows that that's nonsense, right? And every teacher would tell you that it's nonsense, that the kids focus better, that they learn better, that school means more. I once was talking with a university professor who, of course, is lecturing with people looking at their laptops. And she said, I'm competing with porn and Facebook. She said, I better be a good lecturer to compete with that. Now, kids in
it's like me at this time of the night.
Elementary school.
Rich loves talking about porn.
Don't need to be worried about that, but they do need. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, we know what's on kids' phones, right? So who knows exactly what it is? But it wouldn't surprise me if it's some of that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you know, this sounds like a terrible name drop, but I was discussing this with the new ambassador to America, the British ambassador last night, Christian Turner. We were talking about this, I know, thank you. We were talking about this exact topic because he's got 2 children in their early 20s. One of them, I think, is maybe, 20, 22. And he said he was looking at some research about the workplace and also the classroom. And they found that if you had your phone on the table and you had the sound off, I think it was, you were 50% less likely to take in the information, or you took in 50% of the information. Right. If you had it out of the room, you were more likely to take in 100% of the information. If you had it on with the sound on, you took in even less percent of what you were hearing. He was saying it's so obvious. And he was saying, I think what I'm going to do here, actually having meetings, is to insist that people leave their mobile phones outside the room. Because we are all instinctively slightly pulled back to it all the time. I find it baffling that we're not seeing through this. And we were discussing last night that I think we will look at this generation when they probably have a social media ban for under 16s, and we will look back and we will say, what did we do to that generation? About 20 years of kids that we messed up.
And Bev, how many of these kids are on Adderall or some sort of drug to
Everyone's
help them
got
focus?
ADHD.
Everybody has it. So what is this study actually saying? Are they saying medicated kids are paying attention more? What, it just doesn't. Yeah. This is. I'd like to see more.
We asked them to come on. Actually, they didn't want to, but yeah. Right. Moving on. Benjamin Netanyahu is going to visit Washington tomorrow amid fears in Israel that Donald Trump will strike a weak deal with Iran. Netanyahu had been expected to travel to America mid-February for the first meeting of President Trump's Board of Peace, but it has been brought forward following the initial round of US-Iran talks in Amman on Friday. So Jared Kushner, obviously President Trump's son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, special envoy, will represent the US. Richard, why is Netanyahu in town?
Probably for 2 reasons. Let's start with Gaza. The fact of the matter is, that's a mess. Hamas controls 47% of Gaza. It still has AK-47s. And that's a nutty outcome with all the loss of life, the amount of time this has taken. That is crazy, and something has to give there. As regards Iran, look, this is even more complicated, because the fact of the matter is, if Trump makes a deal with the current regime, the people in the streets, they were clamoring for freedom, and they won't have it. If somehow or other they start bombing the regime, again, will the people, whoever is going to take over then, is it going to be coherent, or is it going to be like Libya after Gaddafi was gone? So I just think there's a reason that we've been talking about Iran for now many weeks, like we were just on the verge of bombing, and here we are still talking, and Netanyahu's in town talking about it. You know, is Israel prepared to take whatever incoming they're going to get if the U.S. does decide to bomb? I mean, that's something presumably they'll talk about.
Tim, how do the American people feel at the moment about Netanyahu? Do they see him as a good guy?
Yeah, I think they do. I think Americans overwhelmingly support Israel, and I think they overwhelmingly see that it would be a terrible idea to cave when it comes to Iran, or cave when it comes to Hamas. I saw the UK is saying, let Hamas keep the AK-47s, and I'm sitting here thinking, that's your start for bargaining? I mean, I know what President Trump has said consistently, which is Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. So I think if that's the base point that you're starting from, that's a pretty big red line, and if you can get to it, great. But if you can't, we know that we're willing to drop bunker busters on nuclear facilities. Fordo. We know we've been consistent on that, and I think President Trump is staying that way.
Well, we'll bring you all the latest out of the White House tomorrow when they have that meeting. Sorry I didn't come to you on this, Paul, but I do want us to finish on some slightly lighter notes. I know you've had a very serious evening with Patrick as well tonight. We're going to talk about the halftime show at the Super Bowl. Bad Bunny was the controversial choice. Have a quick look at how it went.
Cuba, República Dominicana, Jamaica, Haití, las Antillas, United States, Canadá, a my motherland, mi patria, Puerto Rico. Seguimos aquí.
So the whole performance, Tim, was not in English. Is he Puerto Rican?
Yeah.
Where's he from?
Yes.
Puerto Rico.
Sorry, I have no idea about him.
And I'll tell you what, with this show, if you've ever stood in line for a ferry to go from Fariado to Culebro, which I have, that show was about as disorganized and chaotic as that process was. So it was a good reflection, I guess, of some of the aspects of Puerto Rico. But I got to tell you, you're not reaching anybody here in America. If you want us to turn off the NFL, that's how you're going to do it. Keep going with it. Keep going, guys.
The controversy, Richard, is that he didn't speak a word of English in a country of 300 million people, the majority of which speak English.
Correct. And you tell me, I would give you, Bev, $100 for every word you think Donald Trump understood when it was Kendrick Lamar or Dr. Dre singing. Okay? The answer is he wouldn't. You would have nothing out of that deal.
What are you talking about?
My point is,
meets with
my point is that nobody
in the Oval Office.
No, my
Donald
point
Trump's
is
a fan
that
of
nobody
this.
is understanding what these guys are singing, whether it's in English or Spanish.
Trump is.
And let me just say one thing.
He is the president who understands
I transcribed what Kid Rock said. It goes like this. Ba-da-da, ba-bing, ba-da-bing, diggy, diggy, diggy. So you tell me, is that the Queen's English or what?
That's Scouse, isn't it, Paul? That's Scouse. And just to be clear, Kid Rock did the alternative halftime show on behalf of TP USA, Charlie Kirk's organisation, on the other side. Paul, would it be so controversial in the UK if we had an equivalent? I don't know. We don't really have an equivalent of the halftime show. And if nobody spoke a word of English, would it cause outrage?
Yes, it would cause outrage amongst the majority of the people that watch our channel. For instance, the traditionalists, the conservatives. That's exactly where it would. I mean, in isolation as a piece of art and music, I'm not offended by it in any way, shape or form. The thing is, I think the thing to bear in mind, and I don't know enough about American culture to know if this is 100% true, but I'm sure that the Super Bowl halftime entertainment isn't about just appealing to the NFL fans. It's about appealing to mass audience. I had no idea who Bad Bunny was. When I was working here on Sunday night when the Super Bowl was on, there was a floor manager on who was a lot younger than me, and I said to him, do you know who he is? He didn't know who he was either. And I'm talking about a guy in his early 20s. So I assume he's very popular with someone. It does feel, if you're being cynical, that it's a little bit rubbing the nose in it. It feels like that to me, because this guy did the whole thing in Spanish, and he could have done. I actually had this debate today with a friend of mine. She thought it was wonderful. She's a media person. She works in the mainstream media, so she's obviously indoctrinated into this sort of thing. And she said to me, well, it was a wonderful spectacle, Paul. And I said, well, yes, but he could have spoken some English. And I felt like he didn't want to. He deliberately.
So they were trolling Trump with this.
Yes.
They were trolling Trump, Richard. You must have loved it, Richard, because you would have sat there going, ha, this is payback time for President Trump, who hates anyone from South America.
Again, Trump said in a tweet, nobody understood what he said. So that's ridiculous, right? That's idiotic. And the fact of the matter is, it was entertaining. I didn't understand a word of it either. But again, it was as entertaining as the last few Super Bowl performers, Kendrick Lamar and Dr. Dre, whom I didn't understand either, and I bet you didn't either.
Shall we have a quick look at a Manchester United fan? Right, I love this story. I didn't think it was going to be so entertaining, but then I saw the pictures. So this is a Man United football fan. And he's gone 493 days without cutting his hair because he vowed that he would not cut his hair until his team won 4 games in a row. And they've had a terrible season. And they would have won their 5th match today, except they drew. Let's have a quick look at him.
Day 493 of not cutting my hair until Man United win 5 games in a row. This is the moment we've been waiting for. West Ham versus Man United, the 5th game. I'll be streaming on Kick later today.
No, just to be clear, that was not the best picture because the rest of it around is not his real hair. But he has got this extraordinary hair. I don't know whether you've seen it, Paul, that just grows out like a giant sort of microphone, doesn't it? It's just got this massive hair, poor guy. But he's made him something of a celebrity.
Yeah, I'm a football fan, and this sort of appears within my algorithm on certain social media platforms. I also empathise because my hair grows exactly like that as well. Yeah. I've got very curly hair,
I can see that.
and it just grows out. I wish I could grow my hair. I want to look like Jim Morrison, but I don't. I look like that guy. And he's been growing like this obviously for nearly a year now, well over a year, sorry, and he was so close today. That is so close to it being shown. I don't know what it's going to be like. There'll be things living in there.
Yeah.
But Bev, would you rather have somebody grow their hair out for over a year, or like some nasty Philadelphia Eagles fans not wash their underwear until they win in the playoffs?
Is that a thing?
Yes, of
that's
course.
an actual thing.
Look it up.
Oh, no.
James Carville said
Don't
he
look
didn't
it
wash his
up,
underwear
Bev. Do
during
not
the
look
Clinton
it up.
campaign in 1992 because he thought, they were on a win streak and he didn't want to bring bad luck. So, yeah, it's a thing.
I'd rather the hair.
What kind of world are we living in, Richard, though, when somebody can literally become an internet sensation? He's had TV appearances, this guy. I think it's a lovely story, but what kind of world are we living in?
I think it's a world where we're desperate for something slightly offbeat, and this is that. And obviously there's a visual that goes with it, so it's kind of a perfect story.
I know for a fact Rich washes underwear too.
Thank you.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. What else have we got that we can just finish the end of the show with here, boys? I think we've got a couple of minutes. Should we talk a little bit about California's wealth tax?
Wow.
Do you know much about this? Tell us what's going on, Tim, with this. Yeah. It's controversial here.
California, they're losing billionaires. They're moving out. California has a massive problem because they have an outflow of 1.6 million people over the last 10 years. And you look at states all around the country in the U.S., and what you got to know in Britain is you have federal taxation, but you also have state taxation. California is the highest, and they're proposing 5% additional for those billionaires. Now, they're saying it's a one-time tax, but we know how one-time taxes go. That means it's permanent. And so you're now seeing Mark Zuckerberg saying, I'm leaving. You're seeing Larry Ellison saying, I'm leaving. You're seeing all these billionaires leaving, and where are they going? They're going to Florida, where there's zero income tax. And that's a huge boon to the economy because they're not just taking themselves, they're taking their businesses with them.
And honestly, Paul, we can hard relate, okay? We're seeing a similar, aren't we, of the millionaires leaving the UK?
Yeah, it seems to be this passion, a kink of the left to just tax people till they just cannot take any more and then they leave. I don't know what. I mean, this is beyond the Laffer curve, this sort of stuff. A wealth tax in California, they've been taxing the wealth out of people for years. The reason I have some understanding of this is because I was following the story with Joe Rogan when he left California to go to Texas.
That's right.
Because it was just too... He said, why would I keep paying this tax? Because when you look around, you can't see where it's going. If all of California was a paradise, perhaps it might be worth it. But it's not. It's really not. I mean, I've never been there, unfortunately, but the images I've seen.
And Richard, this policy relies on what? Rich people waking up in the morning and going, I just want to give away more of my wealth to people who aren't working as hard as me. Is that what it relies on, that sort of altruism?
Yeah, here's how bad things are in California. If it was its own country, it would be the fourth, maybe fifth largest entity on the planet in terms of its economy, okay? Yes, Larry Ellison, Zuckerberg, Bezos, all these people who are buds with Trump, I think actually to a certain extent it's a political statement. It's a political statement that they're kind of making by saying, we don't need California. We know that Trump's been at war with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, right? So this is their way of kind of sucking up, just like ruining the Washington Post has been for Jeff Bezos. So look, The fact of the matter is, a lot of people are leaving California because it's so desirable, supply and demand being what it is. Housing prices are through the roof. Now, these guys can afford it, right? But I think they're making sort of a political statement more than kind of an economic one.
They're not making a political statement, Rich. They are making a financial decision, and they're taking not only themselves, they are taking their income, they are taking their businesses with them to places that won't treat them like they are terrorists by confiscatory tax policy. And that's exactly what this is. And by the way, California is a big economy because they're resting on the altars of the past. But if you continue to double down on the policies, which they're doing with a 5% wealth tax, you will lose that. And when you continue to let illegals in and give them sanctuary, this is going to destroy the large economy that they have. And by the way, let me just say this. I love California. It's a great state. But I'll tell you one thing. I would never move there because the policy is devastating.
The economy is growing. For whatever it's worth, the economy is growing, whether that's Hollywood, Silicon Valley, you name it. The economy of California is growing.
Facebook,
notwithstanding all these policies that you're saying are so horrible.
Amazon, they're all moving out.
Well, I can tell you where they're not going. They're not coming to the UK, unfortunately, because we've got the highest tax burden since World War II, and we are seeing the same sort of exodus. And you just think, when will the socialists learn that the psychology has to be factored into people's decisions? Right. And ultimately, human beings tend to be pretty selfish, and they want to do what's right for their families. Gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been so nice having you here. Paul Cox, Richard Goodstein, Tim Dosher. I'll see you tomorrow night, midnight the UK, 7 p.m. here. See you then.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office. Changes to the weather are on their way, but for today at least, more wet weather is expected widely across the UK, with a colder feel across Scotland and much of the rain over hills turning to snow before the day is out. But it's a wet picture for virtually the whole of the UK, aside from the far north and northwest of Scotland and the south of England, and where there will be some drier and brighter weather at times, albeit still with some showers here and there. As you can see, a lot of rain elsewhere. Persistent spells of wet weather continuing across eastern Scotland could cause some issues given the saturated nature of things. But by the end of the day, actually, as the cold air begins to arrive above 300-400 metres, we're talking about snow over the Grampians, and that will come down even lower on Wednesday night into the start of Thursday. So a cold end to the day for Scotland, feeling cold in the wind as well for northern England into Northern Ireland, but further south we're in the milder air and actually some cloud breaks as we go into Wednesday evening for South Wales into parts of the central and southern part of England, but some rain will skirt the far south and southeast, clearing away into the near continent. Meanwhile, Thursday and the early hours brings a lot more rain once again to Northern Ireland, parts of northern England, especially the northeast, as well as eastern Scotland. Showery rain elsewhere, a lot of cloud cover, so generally a mild start in the south on Thursday, but a colder feel for Scotland, for northern and eastern England, with a biting easterly wind starting to arrive. And that means there'll be some sleet and snow showers for the north and east of Scotland, increasingly so through Thursday. Rain rather than snow through Northern Ireland into much of northern England, parts of Wales and the Midlands. In the southwest, it's brighter for a time, further showers to Cornwall by the end of the afternoon. And then during Friday and the weekend, it turns colder, but also a little drier.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So
So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it wasn't a horrendous misjudgment, but how long now will Starmer last? We're going to debate that. Plus, unbelievable, the number of migrants on benefits has tripled in the last few years. How much longer are taxpayers going to put up with it? And working from home. I made a comment yesterday that basically said, get back to the office, work is good for you, and you'll be much less productive working from home. Unbelievably, 15 million views on X alone. I'm going to debate that tonight with my panel, because I think I'm right. Well, often I do. But before all of that, let's get the news with Sam Francis.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, we start this hour with breaking news. Counter-terrorism police are understood to be leading an investigation after 2 boys were stabbed at a secondary school today in northwest London. A 13-year-old has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Officers were called to Kingsbury High School in Brent this afternoon, just before 1 o'clock. Both boys were taken to hospital, one treated as a priority at a major trauma centre. Police say both are in a serious condition. The Metropolitan Police has said that the incident is not being treated as terrorism, despite counter-terror officers leading inquiries. Well, the reaction has been strong among those voicing their concern. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, who has posted online in the last few minutes, saying she is heartbroken by the stabbings, adding that her heart goes out to the families affected and to the young people, the teachers and the school community. She also said the government is in contact with the school and the council to offer support as investigations continue. In other news tonight, Sir Keir Starmer has said he will never walk away from the country he loves and vowed he won't stop fighting for working people. The Prime Minister was speaking today to members of the public at a cost of living event in Hertfordshire, just a day after his position came under pressure.
Never walk away from the mandate I was given to change this country. I will never walk away from the people that I'm charged with fighting for. And I will never walk away from the country that I love.
Well, senior Labour figures have since moved to publicly back the Prime Minister, including Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He says he supports the Prime Minister, calling for unity within the Labour Party as pressure continues to mount on Sir Keir Starmer. He also said he has now directly spoken to Sir Keir, urging a stronger sense of teamwork and for internal briefings to be dialed down as the party faces intense scrutiny.
Yes, he has my support. The government has my support. It is absolutely right that people give the government stability in this moment. I don't agree with you that the government hasn't done anything to support, as you say, working class Britain. I reference things that we are doing with the government support in Greater Manchester.
Well, staying with news from Westminster, and today it was confirmed that